So this morning, I woke up and I was greeted with an email from the Josh Mandel campaign. And then I saw some press reports about the Josh Mandel campaign, and they were all about trying to play up an altercation that took place between Josh Mandel and Mike Gibbons at a March 18th candidate forum. And I'm going to play a little clip of Josh's new ad based on this. And I'm going to play a little bit of an extended clip of what happened at that debate. A lot of people have seen a short part of that clip, but haven't seen an extended clip of it. I mean, no disrespect to anybody with military service credentials. I was not in the military. But Josh Mandel's constant pandering, his constant do anything, say anything, use anyone, pander to anyone attitude to me is not what people with a tradition of our military should stand for. And frankly, the people that I know that I consider to be real military guys are not at all like Josh Mandel. They are also not like the facades like Michael Logue, Joe Dills, locally, who constantly put it in your face. It's a great credential, and it's much appreciated, those people who have been in the military and provided military service. But it does not mean that you are God's gift to the universe. There are smart and dumb people in the military. There are honest and dishonest people in the military. And anybody that's been in the military that I know would tell you that. So, I mean, no disrespect to the military, but I think the facade pandering nonsense of Josh Mandel has got to be called out, especially when it is so unethical and dishonest. So let's do this. Let's play the little ad, and that features a woman in this little ad, and let's go.
I'm Josh Mandel. I approve this message.
Mike Gibbons has the nerve to say military service doesn't count as real work. Marines like Josh Mandel, like my son Andy, risk their lives for our country. Their work is so much more important than Gibbons just making millions for himself. Josh Mandel came home from Iraq. My son didn't. For God and country, please vote for Josh.
Okay, so I respect the woman. I respect the service of her son. It's a tragedy that he passed in his military service. But I don't respect the Josh Mandel do anything, say anything, use anyone, and pander to anyone type of mentality. Now, she said two things that I want to highlight, and I'm going to quote what she said. Mike Gibbons has the nerve to say military service doesn't count as real work. I'm not necessarily a Mike Gibbons fan, but I don't know where Mike Gibbons said military service doesn't count as real work. And that's the quote that she said. So sorry, ma'am, if you were misled as to what Mike Gibbons said, but I don't remember Mike Gibbons ever saying military service doesn't count. The other thing she said is their work, referring to Josh Mandel and her sons, is so much more important than Gibbons just making millions for himself. Well, I don't know that Gibbons just made millions for himself. I bet you he had clients that I bet you he had involvement in deals that created jobs and so forth. But this presumption he just made millions for himself. That's all that Mike Gibbons ever did, was he made millions for himself. I'm sure is completely dishonest and completely disingenuous. Now, I'm going to play a clip from this debate where Mandel is playing this up that Mike Gibbons said something that I never heard him say, and I don't think he said. It's completely dishonest what Mandel is doing. But I'm going to play a little bit longer of the clip, and I'm going to stop it at different points than probably what you've seen on social media, where it's just kind of the altercation between Mandel and Gibbons. So let's go.
And listen, I think it's important to talk facts and dates and companies. And
so I just want to say, remember, Mandel, he wants to set himself up first. I'm going to be talking facts, dates, companies. If you dispute anything I'm saying, you're disputing facts and dates. By the way, he's pretty much a smear artist and a spreader of untruth on a regular basis. So for him to say he's talking about facts is a joke, frankly. But let's keep rolling.
who has the moral ability to talk about this? I'm a Marine. I did a couple tours in Iraq, first in 04, then again in 07 and 08.
So he was a Marine, and he's the only person that has the moral authority to talk about this. It's complete nonsense. It's complete building up. It's a complete bullshit facade, where then you can't dispute the guy because he was a Marine. He's the only one that has the moral authority to have any comment on this stuff about Mike Gibbons. And by the way, don't forget, he talks facts. Josh Mandel talks facts. Let's keep rolling.
I did funerals for Marines here in Ohio who got killed overseas. Around this same time, my opponent, Mr. Gibbons, was making billions of dollars.
Hold on. Mike Gibbons was making billions of dollars. So remember, Josh Mandel, he only talks in facts. He's got the moral authority. Mike Gibbons, if you were making billions of dollars, then I guess spending 10, 15, 20 million on this campaign ain't going to matter. But I doubt highly that Mike Gibbons was personally making billions of dollars. And that's what Josh Mandel, Mr. Fact and Truth, just said.
By shipping Ohio businesses to China. He just got up here and said he wasn't doing that. Let me give you 3 examples. Perfect Fit LLC had thousands of jobs all over Ohio. He took Perfect Fit LLC, and Mike, why don't you explain to everyone why you sold it to a company called Shanghai Shenda?
So by the way, there's the presumption that what he's saying is true. So it's true. This is a complete smear artist. It's true. So Mike, why don't you explain it? Why don't you just explain? Mike was beating his wife. Mike, why don't you get up here and explain why you were beating your wife? That's like the kind of smear man that Josh Mandel is.
It was in 2015 while President Trump was campaigning against China. And then he did the same exact thing, owning stock in Chinese petro.
All right, Mike, would you like to rebuttal that?
Frankly, I'm not sure where he got Perfect Fit from because I'm unaware of the deal. And I'm not sure what Chinese petro has to do with anything.
So, by the way, so Gibbons now trying to respond to these smears. By the way, remember he said with Perfect Fit, he sent thousands of jobs from Ohio overseas. Then Mandel said, you did the same thing with Chinese petro. The same thing would be you sent thousands of Ohio jobs overseas with Chinese petro. Just, you got to think a little deeper than the kind of crap that Josh Mandel spews all the time that's full of inconsistencies and untruth usually.
Are you saying I owned it?
Yeah, you own stock in it.
Well,
that's where you filed that with the Federal Elections Commission.
Here's a tip also for Gibbons is never ask Josh Mandel a question during your time because he's a snake and he'll start talking during your time and taking up your time.
You own stock in Chinese petro.
I personally didn't buy the stock.
You made millions off it, sir.
I don't think I made millions off of anything. I'd love to have made millions off of Chinese petro.
By the way, Mike Gibbons constantly says wrong things, like saying, I would have loved to make millions of dollars off of Chinese petro. What a bad thing to say right at that point in time. But let's keep going.
First of all,
Shanghai Shenda and Chinese petro.
Buying a second, you may not understand this because you've never been in the no, you don't.
I do.
You've never been in the private sector in your
All right,
entire
I've
life.
worked, sir.
Josh, squat.
Josh.
2 tours in Iraq. Don't tell me I haven't worked. Don't tell me I haven't worked.
So Gibbons never said he hadn't worked. He said he had not been in the private sector, which is an absolute truth, other than I do believe, in Josh Mandel's defense, he did have some Hunter Biden type jobs where his wife's family set him up so he could get rich doing probably nothing within his career politician mantra. So other than Hunter Biden jobs, I'm not aware of Josh Mandel ever being in the private sector. And I didn't hear Gibbons say military service doesn't count as real work. What I heard him say was Josh Mandel's never been in the private sector. I think that's absolutely true.
You don't know squat.
It's okay, right?
You don't know squat.
2 tours in Iraq. Don't tell me I haven't worked.
So he said, you don't know squat. You haven't been in the private sector. Mandel gets up and say, don't tell me I haven't worked. I never heard Gibbons say that. But now we've got an ad campaign from Snake Josh Mandel saying that that's what Gibbons said. Josh Mandel is pretty much like a woke liberal Democrat when it comes to using these smear techniques against people. And he does it regularly. And the using, abusing, pandering also to me is much more the behavior of a left winger than a right winger.
You back off.
Come on.
Never that'll happen.
Sit down.
Never.
Watch.
Yeah.
Watch.
We'll square it away with the rules.
the wrong dude.
No, you're dealing with the wrong guy.
How do you like the thug-like threats? You're dealing with the wrong guy. Real Marine-like Josh Mandel. Why don't you go beat up a senior citizen?
You watch what happens. Listen, you watch what happens.
All right, guys.
Josh doesn't understand this because he never spent a day in the private sector.
Yeah,
But when you buy a secondary stock, when you buy a secondary stock, you aren't giving any money to the company. It's a market thing. And by the way, I don't even know I didn't even know I owned Chinese Petro. And if I did, it was being managed by U.S. Bank. Because I frankly was working in the private sector, and I don't have time to watch a stock portfolio.
Now, I appreciate Mike Gibbons' success. He might want to work on being able to talk like a regular person. A secondary stock, I think what he's trying to say is if the stock's already issued and just being traded amongst people that own the stock, that's not generating money right back to the company like a new issuance of stock. Now, Mike, I don't know if you're aware, I'm not a financial guy, but I worked at IBM and there was a lot of IBM stock buybacks, and then IBM could issue stock out of its treasury, which is different than new stock. But maybe you want to start using words a little bit, Mike, that have a little more connection with regular people than talking about these Richie Rich type terms sometimes. No, you're completely in the right in this. Josh Mandel is a snake, but I just want to say, like, neither one of you is lighting the world on fire.
I'm too busy working.
all right, thank you, Mike, thank you. Well, now I understand why Freedom Works told me to go to the gym today. I get it now.
Okay, so that, if I can get it to go off here, so that's the clip. So you saw the Josh Mandel new ad campaign. You saw the clip of the woman talking with these quotes that are just outright wrong. Mike Gibbons never said military service doesn't count as real work. And you just see the manner in which Josh Mandel comports himself. I'm not a Marine. I've never been in the military. I know some people who are Marines. Is this the way a Marine behaves? Is this the way that a Marine military person behaves? Get in, let's go beat up Mike Gibbons. Why don't we get him back out behind the building and kick his ass? You could feel big man Josh Mandel. So I just felt like a need to reflect on this a second, because Josh Mandel is the ultimate do anything, say anything, pander to anyone, use anyone to get to his end. Mr. Bible in one hand, Constitution in the other, Mr. I'm going to evangelical churches on a campaign, that just a total panderer. And I think an unelectable individual. He already lost a Senate race once in Ohio. And I think in the words of Spinal Tap, if anybody's ever heard that movie, his appeal has become more selective. So thanks for tuning in. And just pay attention and don't just fall for this stuff that people like, especially Josh Mandel, throw out there that is completely bogus pandering.